Now it's time for the Voice for the Industry podcast.
Well, all right, Chris, I'm really excited about today's episode with Court Parker.
It is our first episode of our podcast.
Very exciting, our inaugural, to use a fancy word, episode of our podcast. And I've known Court a long time, but it was just such a great conversation. One part that really sticks in my mind is how he was talking about how he's riding around with his dad when he was a kid, and his dad was, talking about the business. And at the time, he was actually learning about the business, and that's kind of how he became, part of the business. And he didn't realize that was happening. He was just hanging out with his dad,
Yeah. And now he's an Uber to his kids. So
right.
A little different.
His kids don't talk to him. They're just on their iPads and their iPhones. He's just driving around like a chauffeur. So it's pretty exciting. But anyway, I'm excited for everybody to hear it. So let's get started. Well, hello, and welcome to the Voice for the Industry podcast. Today, I am very honored to have somebody I've known for a long time that I greatly admire and respect, Court Parker from Bug Busters. Welcome, Court.
Hey, how's it going?
Great to have you here. I know you've done a few podcasts. I know you've hosted them. I know you've been on them. So this isn't anything new for you, but we're really glad to have you here. We're going to have a good discussion today. I'm really excited. Well, let me go ahead and introduce you, and here's your bio. It says Court Parker is a second-generation owner of Bug Busters, one of the Southeast's leading pest control companies. He has worked in the pest control industry for over 20 years and has helped to shape policy at the state and national level. In addition to serving on industry-related boards, Court is regularly asked to share his expertise via podcasts, presentations, and classes. He currently lives in Atlanta, Georgia, with his wife and 3 children. Okay. So, as the host of this podcast, which is a responsibility I take very seriously, I feel it's my job to present my guests in the most positive light. And quite frankly, that bio is a little humble. So I wrote you one. Here's my bio. Here's my bio for Court Parker. Court Parker was once an influential staff member of one of the most powerful and influential congressional leaders at the time. He had his fingers on the heartbeat of democracy, yet he gave it all up to come home to Atlanta and take over his family pest control business. Court realized early on the value of technology brings to the success of a pest control operation. He was the chairman of the MPMA Technology Committee, and he has been at the forefront of spreading the gospel about technology to other PCOs. He was instrumental in forming a very successful peer group, kind of has a funny name. But also during the COVID years, Court packed up his family and went on a cross-country trip to visit national parks. Along the way, he met with several industry leaders and company owners and did podcasts with them. At a time of great uncertainty, Court's trips brought home the values we all treasure: family, camaraderie, and podcast. I would also like to think that being a Voice for Pest customer for many, many years has helped Court's journey along the way. Welcome, Court. Good to have you.
Oh, thanks. That was awfully nice.
You're welcome. Well, come on.
That's good this morning as I roll out of bed and try to get the kids up for the last week of school, and my wife's not happy and I'm not happy, and then we actually have no power in our house because a storm came through. So,
oh my goodness,
that starts the day off better for me. I need you every morning to call me and say something like that. That'd be great.
I can probably call you and say a nice thing about you for many, many days in a row without repeating myself.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. You don't really get that when you're at home with 3 kids and they're teenagers
or at work, right? But, nobody's going to tell you how great you are at work, right?
No.
So anyway, well, I think you're great. So thank you. So it's great to have you. So what I want to start off with today is, there's a lot of pest control companies struggle, and many fail with the generational transition from father, mother, parents to children. There's consultants out there that charge thousands and tens of thousands of dollars and all that. Well, you made it a successful transition. So I'd like you to kind of talk through it, share your journey, and any tips or helpful things you can share with other PCOs.
Yeah, so obviously a little bit in my bio in the back. I never actually expected to be in the family business. My mom had a swimming pool business that I kind of took over first when I was 15 years old. And to be honest, my dad couldn't afford me at the time. I was making more money teaching swim lessons, being a lifeguard, and running a pool business than most kids at 15, 16, even professionals. I was pulling in thousands and thousands of dollars every summer. So I never really was around having to go out and do the work itself. But as a child growing up in the business, get off the school bus and open the door to the basement, and there's our customer service team. There's my dad. There's the sales guy. Oh, I need, as a younger kid, have a little go-kart, the same kind of engine that was on the back of a termite rig. And, I could take apart that engine, put it on my go-kart to go faster. If I needed gas, I'd siphon out the gas of their tank and put it in mine. So I wasn't always in the business, but I was in the business. I lived.
You were surrounded by the business, yeah.
Surrounded by it. And I kind of always laughed, like, I feel like the business and I have both grown at about the same speed. I was 8 years old when the business started. And the business, now I'm a little bit more. We've been in business 41 years. So it's, I feel like the two of us have kind of grown together, from being just a one-man operator to now having, multiple branches, multiple employees, and different division leaders and all kinds of different other things. So, but during the transition, I never had the pressure from my father to be in the business, which was kind of fun, because, I could pick his head. And I had my own business, even as a teenager, and we talked money, we talked strategy, we talked, growth, we talked customer service. And I never really realized that that's what I was doing, was learning from him in a car, trying to keep him awake as we drive to Florida, or going to soccer games or soccer practices. Just, I'd be in the front seat of a termite rig going to soccer, and learning about the business, not knowing that that's what we were doing. It's not like my kids, when I'm driving them to soccer, they've got their iPhone and they're just over there nonstop on their iPhone. Yeah. And I'm like an Uber driver, right? And I think that's how every parent feels. That's what we are now, as Uber drivers. But soon,
unpaid Uber drivers. Yeah.
We're paying, right? Because we're paying so much
money to be an unpaid Uber driver.
Correct. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to Waymo. Talking technology, Waymo, I'm so excited for. I see it every day in Atlanta. And
I was sorry to interrupt you. I was in San Francisco last week and I took Waymo twice and it was amazing.
I can't wait for it to put my kid in it to send it to soccer practice.
And for those of you that don't know, these are basically driverless Ubers, and they are fantastic. Like, we were in one and there was a UPS truck blocking the street and that car was like nudging over. I mean, they can drive. It's amazing.
It is super cool. I see them every single day. So looking forward to this thing. Guess what? The Waymo's picking you up and I'm still going to be at work and you're going to practice.
That's funny.
But perfect. No, so like no pressure. There was never pressure from my dad. And the people in the industry that know my dad, he's one of the nicest guys there is.
I've met your dad. Very nice guy. Very nice guy.
He's always the one who would take his jacket off and put it in a puddle for anybody. And, so it wasn't pressure. But when I did come into the business, I didn't just jump into this seat. I had to go out and be a termite guy, then run a route, and then get into sales and work on project management stuff, like bring Voice for Pest into the business. And I was always geeked up on technology too, how to make the business run smarter, get rid of things as fast as possible. Paperless was a big thing that I pushed. I was the one that brought us into even PestPack back in 2004. I remember going to my dad saying, "Hey, we're going to spend $134,000 on these things called dolphins so that we could, have our guys in the field, and we're going to have printers and vehicles and, all the different changes that we did." So I think, it was probably around like 07, 08. Times weren't great, but my dad was like, "Hey, I'm going to go ride with my buddies across country on our bikes, and here's the business. It's basically yours and your sister's." And then, he came and went from there, but I don't really ever have a year that he said that he was out, because he's never truly out, like
he's your dad.
He's my dad. And I still talk to him about business to this day. He doesn't have a key to an office, but he still has an office. Like, I don't, but the transition was pretty smooth. But it really wasn't a transition. It was just, it was
just a continuation.
Yes, it was. It was just, and I always tell people, like, I'm just the caretaker of this company, and we're all in this together. I don't really look at titles. People hear me always say, like, I don't care what title you want. You can have any title you want in the business. I even have, like, one of our sales guys who's been with us for a long time. his last name is CEO. So people are like, oh, he's the CEO. And I'm like, oh, well, that's really his last name. But, so
That's hilarious.
it's fun. I mean, and, we just, the transition was good. And, my dad still gets a paycheck on the 10th and the 25th. I know it's different from other people and how they transitioned, that they had, their dad was like, dad or mom was like, no, you're buying the business at this rate and you're going to pay us out over a certain amount of time. For me, it was, you're going to pay me a paycheck twice a month, just like, on the 10th and the 25th. And that's the way it is.
And that works.
He hasn't had a raise in a long, long time, actually. So
come on now, inflation has gone crazy. You got to take care of that.
Yeah.
Well, I find it interesting that you said you were like 8 years old when he started it. So your dad seems like he took a bit of a leap of faith starting a pest control company with a family, with financial responsibilities, and that's a hard thing to do.
It is. And we started October 1st. Who starts in October? Like, you're going into the winter. What are you thinking?
Time to prepare.
Yeah. But he had a good background of owning businesses before. We were in the marina business for 10 years. Our family owned one of the largest marinas on one of the biggest lakes here in Georgia. He was a huge boat dealer with multiple different boat lines, and we had a restaurant, we had cabins, we had tons of docks. It was a big, almost about to be a resort. But Jimmy Carter, prime plus 21%. The banks back then didn't really look at 30-year-olds as to give loans out. Now they do, but back then they weren't doing that. So he had to sell the business, sold it, and went to go work for Rollins in their management, and moved up pretty quickly with Rollins. That's where we've always had a pretty good relationship with working over the years. And he went upstairs because he was manager of the Buckhead branch, and said, hey, I think I'm going to go open up my own business. And Gary was like, Neil, just go back down to Diddlebach and get what you need. And anytime you need anything, let me know. And so there wasn't it wasn't like he just left in the middle of the night, like happens to us.
Right. Well, that's the kind of people the Rollinses are too. That says a lot for them. I actually worked for them 1,000 years ago, but good people.
Yeah. I think they were like, you're going into business October 1st. You'll be back January. But, And then I still think they'll think that we'll be back.
Right. Yeah.
Matt.
We'll let you go play around for a little while. Come on back. Yeah. It's been 20 years.
Matt that runs the M&A team over there is always like, now, Court, there's, your father started out here. And I'm like, they all are, come on back. And
Well, speaking of that and M&A and everything else, I know that you've been pretty successful doing acquisitions. And I know that a lot of PCOs, once they kind of get to a certain point, they look at that as a possible way to grow the business. So I'd love for you to kind of share your perspective, the struggles, the joys and the triumphs and the catastrophes. But, what do you look for? What are the main, when you look at a company, is it strictly a financial decision? Are there culture things? Just kind of whatever how you decide what an acquisition is and some of the best ways to make them successful.
Every single one of them is different. And that's the biggest thing that people need to realize. It's not your business. It's really not. And everybody runs their business differently, but we all basically are doing the same thing. And so if you can just break it down and take out the differences, it's the same thing. You're providing service to someone's home. So the scary part of doing an acquisition is not the customers. It's like all the hidden stuff that you just don't know until it actually closes, and every time there's something that comes along the way. Like, I was just over in my customer service team, and one of the things was on an acquisition. Somebody was selling their home and it was part of an acquisition, and they're like, oh, we have a repair warranty. And I'm like, that company never had a single repair warranty. And then the lady kind of like, well, I don't know. Our realtor told us to say that. I'm like, so you never really know everything. And that one was 3 years ago, right? And our system PestPac is like, no, she has a retreat warranty. But, every one of them's different. I say get in and do it. I really enjoy it. I like the going out and meeting other people and seeing how they built their business, how they grew, what did they do versus what we have done. I think there's so many different little cool niches within our industry. Like we bought a company years and years ago that did just nothing but multifamily on government properties, and people were like, "Oh my God, why would you buy a company that does housing
that was my
authorities?"
thought. Ooh, run
And
away.
housing authorities business is actually, is pretty good business. And, and then when things were going rough here, bed bugs came out of nowhere, right? And where did bed bugs have a good business? Well, we already had a lot of multifamily. So we were able to go into bed bug really quickly with that. And that really helped us when there was a little bit of downturn in the economy because we were in that segment.
That makes sense.
So we've bought companies that are just strictly mosquito. We've bought companies that are strictly residential pest control, strictly commercial pest control. We've bought companies for $1, and we've bought companies for $1 million. But we try to find that sweet spot of somebody that's looking to retire on their way out. It's because that kind of gives you that, like, okay, they're not going back into business. Because we've had that. I've had 2 companies that they've gone right back into business, and it hurts, and then you got to deal with lawyers, and sometimes you just don't deal with it. You're just like, it's not worth it.
Right.
And
they count on that, I think. Yeah.
I think they do count on that.
Yeah.
But you gotta fight back. And sometimes I think karma gets them. So
yeah. No, I mean, when I worked at McCall many years ago, we did quite a few acquisitions. And what I found interesting was it was 2 things. Either the owner would be like, yeah, I'm going to be here. And then the day the check clears, they're gone. Right. See you later, bye. Which is actually good, I think, from the when you're buying the company. But then you have the ones that never want to leave, and it's like, no, you don't own this company anymore. Right. It's, there's a grace period. I'll give you a hug, but at some point you got to go. Right. So it's usually the first one. But anyway, have you run into that where the owners are, kind of hanging out?
No.
No, that's good. That's good.
I really haven't. I mean, I've had some that were like, oh, I'm going to help and you're going to pay me in the transition. I'm like, no. Like, I just straight up front with them, like, what's your plans? What do you want to do? I always ask, what are you going to do with your life? Like, what do you like? It's when you're sitting down and having that first discussion, it's like, what do you like to do? You got to find out what they like to do because they got to find something to take up their time. And if they don't have a hobby, then you're going to run into the situation you're dealing with.
You're going to be their hobby. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, and then I try to tell them, like, hey guys, you got mailbox money. It may be a little, it may be a small company, but it may be a lot. And sometimes it's usually about the same of what they're used to making for a living. After, especially if they have a couple of employees, they're usually the payments come out to close to what they're making for a living prior to them selling. They don't have the other benefits like a gas card and all the other things that
all the other stuff they can charge the company. Yeah.
Right.
Gym memberships.
Yeah. But I mean, I've always said there's like multiple ways to grow a business. One's acquisitions. 2 is a very high budget on marketing, so you can drum up leads and drum up opportunities for your team members to go out and sell. Then you've got the residential pre-treat market is another avenue, and all those avenues are about the same price when you really break it down and look at what your cost per sale is, cost per lead, cost per acquisition, cost per, when you look at all those different things. I mean, let's be honest, when you're doing a residential pre-treat, you're basically giving it away.
Right.
But if you give away so many of them and if you can close 50% of the renewals, okay, it's a long win. But I mean, a lot of companies have been built on that and have been very, very, very successful. So, those are the main, I've always said, are the main ways to grow. And we try to do a little bit of all that at Bugbusters.
Awesome.
And I try every year to have a couple acquisitions, but I probably talk to 10 and close 1 or 2.
Where do you find them? Do you use brokers or?
No, I mean, I've never really done well with brokers, and half these brokers are guys I've known. Like come on.
Why am I paying you to do something?
Yeah, I'm like, I knew your business. You and I were in the same organizations. I mean, come on. Don't tell me there's a process. Like, I know there's a process, but they're looking to get the most bang for their buck. And usually the brokers are usually going to sell a company to, nowadays private equity,
Right.
And so I'm not private equity. and we self-fund every one of our acquisitions. We don't use outside money. So nowadays, my area of my sweet spot that we look for is not those bigger companies, because that's the value of what private equity, the Rollins, the Rentokils,
they can write the big checks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they can write the big checks. Yeah.
But people have to be, they got to pay attention to what those agreements say. My agreement's like 6 pages long. Mine's simple. And some of these other agreements, they're not simple. They're, 75 pages long, and there's all kinds of clauses in there where you think you're getting X, but by the time everything's said and done, you're getting really closer to what I would have paid you.
Right. With probably a lot more headache. Yeah.
And a lot more headache, and the cancellation rate and employees that are leaving your company that, but at some points, owners may be like, I don't really care. I'm done, and I need to get the most bang for my buck. And I don't blame them for that at all. It's okay.
Right.
But then there's guys that are like, it's their business. There are guys who would be like, hey, Court, we've known you forever. We knew your father. Like, we really care about these employees. I mean, one of my longest employees 20 years ago was an acquisition, and she's like my right-hand man, and she's probably going to retire in the next couple of years. I'm like, oh no, where are you going? But she interviewed me on an acquisition, and her and the owner's wife I had to have dinner with in a small town in South Georgia or middle of Georgia, and they interviewed me. And it wasn't the, so yeah, but no, it's fun. And, the best part is meeting and talking with people. I mean, I've talked to one yesterday. I'll talk to another one on Friday. And they don't all happen immediately. Like I've talked to one for 5 years, and it's going to happen at some point. Yeah.
Well, speaking of talking to people, let's switch subjects a little bit to networking, right?
Yes.
Because you are a big proponent of networking. You started a peer group that I've had the honor of attending a couple of meetings. One, I ended up in the emergency room because of the altitude, but we'll talk about that. We don't want to talk about that. But anyway, how does networking drive your business? And what are the benefits of peer networking? I mean, I think everybody kind of understands it, but what have the benefits been to you and your company? And what do you recommend other PCOs do to enter the kind of the networking peer group kind of information sharing world?
Well, I think the beauty of our industry, and that's what these podcasts are, and there's millions of them, it seems like nowadays, is it's a very sharing group. Not all businesses are this sharing. And I think it's to the point where people are like, you know what, you can share this information, like sharing even a person's P&L. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to recreate what they do. So for me, peer groups have been very influential in our growth of our business. When I came into the business, my father was in a very small group with Lloyd Smigel, and
I remember him.
Good old Lloyd. He was, his meetings were, once I got going into them, I'm like, okay, he had this bright, what are those called, where you put the laminates down and they shine up on the wall.
The overhead projector. Yeah.
The overhead projectors, and they were in Dallas always. And then the group, I think we were like the first group, and the guys were like Danny Myers, the Phillips out of St. Louis.
Was it Tom Gibbons?
Bruce. Tom was, I don't know if he was in the first group or the second group, but sometimes he was in there. There's a bunch of fun people. And my dad became really, really good friends with all these people. And, so then some of us second generation came on, and we were like, I think I already heard this from him last month or last quarter or whatever it was. It's like, this is the same message. And so a couple of us were like, hey, y'all have been doing this for years. Y'all are friends. Why can't we do this? He's really expensive, especially if you bring 2 people to the meeting. He's really expensive. We were still all small companies. And I said, why don't we just do it on our own? And why don't we go out and find speakers for each meeting? So we meet twice a year. We meet in January, and then we meet July. And I said, why don't we run the meetings and we find the speakers on the topics that we want? And it doesn't mean we can't use him. We can bring him in on a topic that he's really good at with sales. But what about HR? What about, marketing? What about leadership? What about culture? What about all these things now, technology? Back then, it really wasn't as much technology, but it was. And so we had our first meeting in Atlanta, and it was really just to build like, okay, who's here? So it was the Phillips out of St. Louis, the Tenenbaums from Arizona, Danny Myers, trying to think of who else was there at that first meeting. It was supposed to be at the Embassy Suites because it was always Embassy Suites, but I ended up having a really bad soccer injury, so it was in my living room.
That's hilarious.
And so then it was like, who do we know? Okay, well, we know the guys at Modern. Let's get the brothers in from Modern. Oh, Chuck from Radico Services up in Michigan. Oh, let's go. Danny is like, oh, I'm good friends with the Hewitts, and let's bring in Frank. And so then we just were like networking, and we built a group, and we called it the U Group. And and it just so happens because the table's shaped into U, and maybe somebody went to University of Miami, but
I was wondering where it came from. Yeah, all right.
But it works because it's all about you, right? So, and when the table is shaped in a U, nobody's like breaking off into smaller groups, and so over the years it's grown, and we've had a lot of members sell, and we've brought in new members, and it's been really rewarding. We've learned, when we got into the mosquito business 10 years ago, Chuck in Michigan was doing it more than anybody. I just copied his formula. And when we got into bed bug, Fatzner was doing tons of work in Wisconsin. I just copied his formula.
Right.
I mean, that's what we do. And then each January we would do like a P&L meeting, and it's like, oh my gosh, why is your chemical at that? My percentage is at that. Or my vehicle cost is at this. And so it's over the years, it's evolved. We have great speakers. We have the last meeting we had a speaker on AI. We always are trying to push the envelope.
Yeah.
And I believe that's what helped also the two other things you were asking about earlier. The transition of my father to our leadership for myself and my sister. The U Group was definitely part of that process. Yeah, I also think the M&A side would help.
Everybody, I'm old, so I remember back before the internet, I had a Time Life book, and that's what I did with everything when I fixed stuff in my house. It showed me how to fix my dishwasher, whatever. Now everybody watches YouTube video, right? If I want to do something, I just watch a video. So your U Group is basically kind of like watching a YouTube video, right? They show you what they're doing and how they're being successful. So why do you need to go through the pain and everything else? Just watch the YouTube video and like you said, just kind of copy their process, and it works. Right?
Yeah. We're not stealing information. We're just, borrowing.
It's given to you. Yes.
It's given to you. It is.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's not a week that goes by that I probably don't have a text message or an email from somebody within the group asking about something. I owe Robert John right now down at J&J some information he's asking about. And I'm like, sorry, man, I'm going to get back to you. And so that's what we do. And it's very sharing. So why recreate the wheel on a lot of this stuff is why peer groups are important. And for us, I mean, you can go to our website. I think we've got about 18, 19 companies now. We don't want to be too big. We don't want to really be much bigger than that. We try to make sure that we're in areas that we're not competing with each other. There are some overlaps now as we've all grown a little bit.
Right.
But we try to make sure that we're not overlapping. But it's been great. I'm looking forward to our next meeting is actually in Arkansas. And Shane West is hosting the meeting. So we'll be at University of Arkansas, staying there. So it's going to be kind of fun.
Sounds like fun. It sounds like fun. Yeah. So no, I mean, networking in this, and we've talked about this and other people talked about it. I mean, this isn't, like you said earlier, this is an industry where people share, because I think everybody just wants to help people. And so if you're not in a peer group, try to find one, go to conferences. There's all kinds of great information out there. All right. Next topic, of course, now, since it's 2025, if two people in the industry talk, we have to talk about AI, right?
Oh, yeah.
We have to do it. Checkbox. So, and I know that you're in heavy. I know you're using some of our AI features, shameless plug, but really, how do you see AI kind of shaping the industry? What do you see as the future of maybe from a business owner's perspective or just any perspective? Where do you see AI taking the industry kind of in the future?
Well, I always look, what's the most expensive part of running a business? It's labor, right?
Yeah.
100%. Like there's nothing else out there. We can bang our heads against the wall and try to get our chemical prices lower and our vehicles lower. It's labor, and labor is not going away. We still have to have great people to have a business, and it's the people that run the business, right? So what can we do to take some of that labor pressure off of us? And that's AI. What can we do to get the best bang for our buck with our current people that we have? Getting things that are monotonous that AI can knock out, quicker, faster, and probably give us a little different outlook on it. Let's utilize AI. Marketing. Oh my gosh, we constantly are using AI for marketing. So the overall picture is like, what can we do to be faster, to be more nimble, and use our people for people stuff?
Right.
And what can we use AI to do in the background? So, yes, we use Voice for Pest and have been with Voice for Pest for a very, 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 very long time. Way back in the Copasan days when it wasn't even called Voice for Pest.
Right.
But no, X-Ray when it came on board was great. I actually spoke with the owners of now X-Ray 4 years ago. We met and he and I tried to go down that path, and it just wasn't working. So some other people in our industry were able to get it down that path, and I'm very grateful to them on that. With X-Ray, we've been doing a ton. But then we're different because we also are big in HubSpot. I've got a great marketing team. Within marketing, there's in HubSpot, there's called Breeze, and Breeze is amazing what it can do. We're utilizing AI. I use Copilot. We're an Office 365 company, and I use Copilot every day. Like I'll have this great email, and I'm like, that doesn't sound really good. Hey, Copilot, this is who I'm speaking to. Can you rewrite this for me? Looking at analyzing multiple Excel reports at the same time, and even on M&A now, taking numbers that we have and seeing what AI thinks of the valuation of a company. So we're doing a bunch of stuff,
Yeah. My thing, the biggest impact AI has, besides what we have, here where I work, but for me is the AI. I use the Fireflies note taker for my meeting.
Got that too.
That thing has changed my life so much for the better. It's amazing. It's just great. And it just basically, tracks everything. I need to meet with somebody. I go back, I look, it tells me exactly what happened in the meeting. I can listen. It's amazing. And I agree with you. I think, the thing about AI is it can do all of that background work that people had to do to get the information they needed to act. And so now we can, like you said, now we can get AI to give our people the information, and they could spend their time being positive and making contributions instead of collating and gathering information. And I think I agree with you 100%. That's and it's exciting, and I don't think anybody really knows where it's going to go. It's kind of mind-boggling to think about it.
No, I'm super excited. Last week, obviously, with the 2.0 that came out with X-Ray, some of the stuff that I was like, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do this? All of a sudden, it's like, boom. It's like, okay, when we do price increases, the customer service team's always like, we got 100 calls on people that are upset about price increases. We had 5.
Yeah.
And
exactly what happened on everyone. So it certainly illuminates a lot of things.
Yeah, sure. And I love the ability to see like a red, a green, or yellow on sentiment of a customer. I think there's a lot of stuff that we're doing that we drop those. A lot of that stuff we're dropping down into our HubSpot, and then making sure we're following up with customers with more detailed stuff, and we can see their like if it's things within your stuff, I'm then rotating down into another AI system so that we can build in. And then same side on the sales side of it, what you were seeing, like third-party objections. Okay, so let's grab all those third-party objection people. Let's put them into a drip campaign utilizing Breeze and go back after them with, hey, 3 days ago, we didn't close you. Here's $50 off. Here's $75 off 3 more days later. Here's $100 off. And that's all all automated.
Yeah,
And
that's amazing.
and there's so many cool things that we can keep doing. And I truly believe, like, I think if we all look at the numbers of how many calls we take, like 60% of them are usually billing issues or schedule issues.
Yep.
Why does a human have to answer that call? And that's where we're getting to.
Absolutely.
And customer service is hard. It's super, super hard. It's probably one of the hardest parts of our business. And finding the right people too is really, really hard for customer service. So if we can utilize AI to take some of those calls and have proper script, like saying it exactly what we want it to say, it's going to be awesome. So we're working on that right now. And then, some of us, I've kind of ventured off with a little bit of a side business with some friends of mine outside the industry. Since June, we have 5 full-time employees in the Philippines. And so our team in the Philippines was back-end team members at first, but now they're forward-facing team members. So they're handling calls, they're doing all the back-end stuff just like a normal customer service team. And to be honest, we couldn't do that if we didn't have Voice for Best, and if we didn't have X-Ray, and if we didn't have AI. And so we've been running that since June. We've had a couple of team members in the Philippines that we've had to let go and find new team members. But it's been very, very rewarding. I mean, they're basically the same hours that we are, and they just live a different lifestyle than all.
Yeah, they work all night. Yeah, they
work at night.
Nighttime. Yeah, they're working all night. And it's funny. I see more and more customers doing that. Using. The thing, I lived in the Philippines when I was younger, but, Filipinos are very good at customer service.
That's amazing.
They're so hospitable, and they're such good people. You probably don't want them to try to collect money because they're going to be like, oh, don't
we're
worry
not doing that.
Yeah.
No.
But customer
that's the
service,
team here in Atlanta.
Yeah, those feisty, angry Americans can collect the money, right? But yeah.
No, and it's been great. And they're just another arm of our company. And, a lot of us have remote team members. So why can't they be in the Philippines?
Right. If they're in Atlanta or they're in Manila, I mean, they're still logging in the same.
They're still logging in. They still have, Pest Pack. They're still on Voice for Pest. So now, a couple of those, the guys that I originally met, we've started another business called CP3 Agent. And so we've gone to market to help other pest control companies, service companies. And we've been trying to place team members in the Philippines with other companies. And I look at it as like, this is a
Feel
cool
free to
thing.
Promote that business. Feel free to promote
I'm trying.
Yeah. It's okay.
But,
that's why you're
okay,
here.
Well, so it's called cp3agent.com. But no, it's just brand new, and it's something that we were like, hey, this could help other people. And that goes back to the sharing model. I've talked with a couple of guys in the U group that want to go live with it, but they're like, they're trying to build out their processes for it. And other people. And so I think it's a benefit for a larger company that you can utilize these team members on the back end, and then you could bring them forward facing. But I also think it's an amazing game changer for people that might be a 1, 2, or 3 man operator.
Yeah.
And they're driving around the whole time having to take calls, or their wife's at home taking calls, or they're paying somebody $20 an hour that is not really suited for what they're doing. But you know what? They went to church with the person, or they found them on Indeed. But then they're having them go into their own house and do this, right? Because we all start out of our house, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I see that as an opportunity too. Like, hey, you can have this person for a fraction of the cost doing the exact same thing as somebody that you would have going into your house in maybe you don't have an office yet, or maybe your spouse is doing that, but she could be doing something else for the business or doing her thing, and you don't have to have that. So I look at
all your calls answered too, right? Because
all your calls
go to voicemail, and you don't know who answered. What did they leave a voicemail? Yeah.
All your calls answered. Dealing with your, everything. If you're on Pest Pack, Field Wrap, whatever. I mean, the technology's there.
Right.
As long as you have like Office 365, you have a voice over IP phone system. It's almost a no-brainer to do, especially when you're even a smaller company, because it's really, really simple. I mean, this is not a hard thing to do. And you're also not having to pay health insurance. You're also not having to pay a lot of these other benefits to get somebody to come work for you. And that's,
and you don't have to find somebody and hire them and all that.
Yeah. And, people are like, well, how's their voices? Well, guess what? These are all college educated people. And you can sit down and listen. I mean, one of our customer service reps, she must have been watching Spanish channel to get her English because she has a Spanish accent. And I'm like, how? This is crazy. But so we bring you to the table. The team that runs this, they're like, hey, here's recordings. This is so and so. Listen to the recording. This is their background. Do you want to move forward on this project? And it's pretty simple. I mean, especially if you have Office 365 and Teams, utilizing Teams, you're doing the same thing we're doing right now. You're just talking to them.
What's the name of the company again?
CP3 Agent.
CP3 Agent. Okay. Yeah. All right. So everybody out there, flood court with all the requests, and he can get bogged down real good. Anyway, well, wow, this has been fantastic. I mean, I think it's been a great conversation. Is there anything that you want to share, or any other topic that you want to talk about that we haven't covered as in our final, discussion period?
I mean,
if not, it's okay.
No, I really, I think the topics we talked about are key to our business, and it's a people business. And you and I have a relationship that goes years and years back to when we had to sit on hard chairs and at Covasan meetings, and but that's what I love about this business. You can learn from each person every single time. I have utmost respect for so many different people that have helped me along the way, and that's why I always try to give back. I've learned so much from other people in the business that if I can just get a nugget here and there from somebody and share a nugget, I'm always available.
And I know you've helped a lot of people. I just from things I've seen and experienced, and you're a great asset to the industry, and I'm really glad you're here. So now it's time. It's game time.
Right?
Game time. So you have a couple choices, right? So I came up with this game that apparently is much harder than I thought it was, and it's as easy as ZYX. Carissa, sorry, I forgot to ask Carissa to come back. Carissa's in here for the game.
Hello.
So the idea of ZYX is you have to say the alphabet backwards, and you can stop and think about it. But if you say it out of order, you have to start over, and you have to keep your eyes closed so somebody doesn't have it on the screen, right? So that's one option. If you think that's too, and if you get the fastest time, you can be on the. See how it's spelled backwards, the TAOG, right? And it says Voice in the Industry Podcast. It's as easy as ZYX Challenge. In that little tiny space right there, that's where your name goes. And as long as you have the fastest time, your name will always be on it. If somebody does it faster than you in a later podcast, then they're gonna beat you. So that's one option. Then the other option is we do what we call just inane questions. We just talk about silly, stupid things, and Chris and I and you tell what our answer is and go from there. So it's your choice. Which would you prefer, sir?
I don't really know if I want a goat trophy sitting in my office with those.
Well, no, I keep the trophy.
Oh, you keep the trophy.
Yeah, if your name's on it.
Yeah, I don't know if I really want to go that
All right. So we can do the inane questions if you'd rather.
Okay. Crazy questions.
Crazy question. All right. First thing is, when you're getting dressed, socks and shoes. Is it sock, shoe, left foot first, right foot? What's the order? I'll go first. I'm sock left, sock right, shoe left, shoe right. That's how I do it.
Okay. I'm super anal about this. Being a former athlete, left sock, left shoe, right sock, right shoe.
Okay. Chris?
Every day. And
every day, no matter what.
Every day, no matter what. And I even have all my clothes lined out 2 days. And I know what I'm wearing. Everything. I'm one of those that's very regimented. Yeah.
See, I wouldn't have gotten that from you. That's interesting. So you're left sock shoe, right sock shoe. Carissa, what about you?
I think I'm sock left, sock right, shoe left, shoe right. Yeah.
That's yeah. That's interesting. And lately, because I've pretty much just moved over to, I'm never going to own a shoe that has shoelaces again. Why? No. That's like old technology, right? I don't want a horse. I want a car. So, or actually, I want to driverless car. So now it's always I put my pants on first and then do my socks and slip it. I'm done. Before when I had to tie, it was an interesting experience. But anyway, so that's good. And I'm going to go back to one we already did. Pizza crust, right? Thin, thick, deep dish. What say you, Mr. Parker?
I'm celiac.
Oh, well, we'll skip the pizza then.
So, as a lot of people in the industry know,
I did not know that. I apologize.
I hate it too. That gluten-free guy. So, cardboard, pepperoni, and cheese.
Yeah. Wow, I just failed as a host. But I will say, at least you're a legitimate gluten-free guy. You're not one of these gluten-free because it's the thing to be. And I appreciate that. All right.
I just had my test the other day, and they're like, "You're doing great, and your score is so good." And I'm like, "So I can go back and have pizza and a baguette?" And they're like, "And a beer?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I have a lady, somebody that I work with who's also a friend. Her husband's allergic to dairy. He can't have any dairy, like allergic. So he discovered the wonders of dairy-free cheese on pizza now. So and all this dairy-free ice cream. But for years he couldn't eat anything. So that's very, very interesting. All right, well then we'll skip the pizza one. So anyway, it's been an honor to have you, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. This is exactly what I was hoping we would be able to do together and talk. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing. It's just been great, and I just appreciate you being here.
No, I really appreciate what you guys have done for the industry, and keep it on. Keep pushing the envelope. It's the lifeblood of our business is the phone.
Yeah,
we sell online. People can go to our website and buy online from us at 1:00 in the morning. But people still want to talk to people. Yeah, we're going to have AI answer those 60%, but we still are the lifeblood of driving leads to opportunities to have a human speak to them, so that a human shows up at somebody's house to do the work. Yeah. So I really appreciate what you guys have done over the years, and continue to please keep pushing it. We need it.
We will. And thank you for the kind words. And it's a people business. That's what it is. It's a people business.
100%.